Here we have Heather Humphreys of Fine Gael, and she is the Rural and Community Development Minister, or the Minister for Rural and Community Development. And Ben is going to ask her a question here about Dundrum and Tipperary. Let's watch her body language as the question is asked. Watch carefully.
Heard that there's the village of Dundrum in County Tipperary where the population of the town is about 165 people and there are plans to move more asylum seekers than the local population. Do you understand why some locals would say that's just...
Now, if you notice, there's no flinching, there's no quick movements. She's consistent in the blinking, in her stance, in her posture. Her facial movements remain the same throughout the question. We go back and watch again, and then we move on.
Village of Dundrum in County Tipperary where the population of the town is about 165 people and there are plans to move more asylum seekers than the local population. Do you understand why some locals would say that's just an absurd situation and that this situation is out of control?
You notice as well, as Ben began to speak before the question became apparent, she put her hand to her throat, and that can be indicative of like a defensive posture. So if you have two male wolves who are eyeballing each other or circling each other, the female wolf of the male wolf will put her head underneath the throat to shield the throat of the wolf. Okay, so even animals recognize that the throat is a very vulnerable part of ourselves. Okay, but once she seen what the question was going to be, she seemed to relax a little bit, and her body language remained the same throughout.
Well, first of all, I haven't heard about that particular instance, but I do know that...
Okay, so her body language would suggest that she did know, because as Ben was explaining to her, so two things: either she did know about it, and I find it very, very hard to believe that she didn't know, because there's members of Fine Gael who've been at these protests, who were at the community meetings, and either those higher up in Fine Gael absolutely do not listen to what is being pushed from the ground up to them, or they don't care. Okay, so either she hasn't heard of this, in which case I would say she's not doing her job appropriately, because it's her business to know this. Dundrum is a small community, but in terms of rural development, it's a big farming community. The surrounding areas are certainly farming communities as well. Okay, so it's in her business to know this. This is in her job description to notice these situations. So for her to say then that she hasn't heard of this, the body language when Ben was asking the question would indicate that this was not new information to her, because she didn't respond as if she was hearing it for the first time. So her words and her body language and actions don't match up.
The Minister of Government's Department does communicate and consult with local communities, and I'm sure that work is ongoing as we speak at the minute. I'm not familiar with that particular case.
But
what she done there is called, in logic, it's called a red herring logical fallacy. And a red herring, quote, is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It may be either a logical fallacy or a literary device that leads readers or audiences towards a false conclusion. So she was asked about the idea, I paraphrase Ben here, of the apparent ludicrousness of importing so many people into a village that those who are imported now outnumber the locals. And she goes on to talk about how Roderick O'Gorman, she knows that he goes and talks to communities. Her response has got absolutely nothing to do with the question that's been asked. Okay, so she's either stupid, which isn't beyond the realm of possibility, but probably unlikely, or she's just being openly deceptive. And she's hoping that she can take your attention away from the question that is asked by Ben and bring it on to something else, or conflate the two of them. So if anybody asks about the morality of doing this, we will just swerve them by saying, well, the politicians are doing their job and they're getting out there talking to people. It's got nothing to do with the question that's actually been asked. So based on her body language not tallying up with her words, and based on her use of fallacious logic here, I would suggest that this woman is being explicitly dishonest with people, and she is a deceiver. This isn't opinion. This is what you're looking at. Either she is totally devoid of logic, in which case she cannot be making decisions in any seriousness or with any, I suppose, level of respect in her ability to do it, or she's using a logical fallacy to swerve your attention away from the question. Deception.
In general, would you say that it's sustainable that we do have villages around the country, not just Dundrum, but other places where the government is talking about or has moved more asylum seekers into the local area than there are locals, such as in Lisdoon, Varna and other places like that?
Well, can I just say that in the majority of cases where people come into an area,
Do you believe that's a genuine smile?
Sorry,
keep us all on our toes, I suppose.
In many cases where people have moved into an area, the locals are...
Note how she checked herself. Prior to the interruption, she said in the majority of cases. She went back on that and said there are cases, right?
There, and they welcome them and they integrate in. And I've seen that on many occasions myself. For example...
So the locals welcome them in and they integrate in. So Dundrum is one of those locations. They have been absolutely welcoming and so easygoing in terms of allowing for the already population of migrants or foreigners in the area, that it looks like now that was, I suppose, seen as a green light to go in and take advantage of this village in Tipperary and the people in it.
But I'm sorry, Minister, but that's not really the question. I mean, of course that's true. That's a separate issue to what I'm asking about, which is, again, the volume of asylum seekers that are being moved specifically into some rural areas. Obviously, as the Minister for Rural Development, if there's a large influx of people to a very small town, is that sustainable long term as well?
She tried to use another red herring there again in her previous response a few seconds ago before Ben continued on, and called it out as well, but in different words. So Ben comes with the question and a desire to talk about or gain this minister's thoughts on the idea of people not being happy with being outnumbered artificially by this government bringing in an excessive amount of people and dumping them onto villages. So Ben is explicit in what he'd like to talk about. And her answer to that is, yeah, but in some cases, people like it and people welcome it. That's not the question that was asked. So her continued avoidance of the question speaks volumes about what her intent is here. And it's not to have an honest conversation with the Irish people.
I'm asking you, do you understand why some people would have concerns about that?
Yeah, well, I do understand that people have concerns, but I can give you one very good example, and Lisdoon Varna is a very good example. I've been down there a number of times myself. There was a lot of people moved into that area, and they have integrated exceptionally well. They're working in the local community, they're working in the local community centre. I've been to visit them myself, and that's a town where it has made a difference. In fact, there were plans to move some Ukrainians out of a particular area into another area, and I actually got calls from local people saying, please don't move them. These people are making a contribution.
Okay, maybe. I wonder if she will go and visit Dundrum. But either way, whether she does or doesn't, again, what is the point of her response? There is no point to it other than to take your attention away from a village or group of people or a town, which there's loads of across Ireland, who are actively opposed to what this government is doing, what this woman is doing. And she doesn't even want to hypothetically talk about the principle that underlies this discontent. She just says, of course I understand why they would be concerned. Okay? So, yeah, but also, the idea that there's villages who are saying, please don't take these people out, we're so much better now that they're here. There can be other reasons for that if that did indeed happen. One of them might be the fact that the young people in Ireland feel so hopeless in terms of their homeland that they're leaving the countryside, they're leaving towns, they're leaving their country. So people that had businesses in these areas, the youth aren't there to replenish the jobs anymore. We also have excess debts. A lot of them are young people. So people that probably worked in these villages, they were probably under pressure prior to any of this stuff. But now that we have excess debts, we have the constant emigration from Ireland, the Irish population is being depleted. We're not reproducing at the same rate, so Irish people are not having the same amount of children. So all families have to dictate and change, I suppose, what their future hopes and future plans are, because the families that were once so commonplace in Ireland are no longer of the same size. You know? So for her to just highlight this one instance, if it happened, and say, sure, look, there's an example of it being great, you're obfuscating a large amount of the context as to why people might be in such a position. It might not be a straight love of these people that are here. It could be out of pure necessity or perceived necessity.
So I think there's concerns initially, and I understand why people have concerns. But when they get to know the people and they can see that they're making a contribution and they want to make a contribution in this country, I think that's what we need to do. And they can see the difference on the ground. So it's important.
Maybe they don't want to meet these people. Maybe they don't want to be forced to have to get to know them. But that's never on the table. That topic is never on the table for discussion. It's not even entertained, to the point where she'll stand there and make a show of herself and show that she's totally logically incompetent or downright sinister and deceptive in public view and on television, on national television. You've RTE and Virgin mics there and all. So she's publicly making a show of herself here and embarrassing herself for the sake of not entertaining the question that Ben brought up, and that is on everyone's lips across Ireland.
Important that we don't have preconceived ideas about who's coming into our country. A lot of these people are very genuine, honest people. They want to be here, they want to contribute, they want to work.
Now, we're going to go back a few seconds and listen to this again. The absolute double standards here is just phenomenal, and it just rolls off these people's tongues. So, hang on now.
Yeah, and they can see the difference on the ground. So it's important that
this bit and on.
We don't have preconceived ideas about who's coming into our country. A lot of these people are very genuine, honest people. They want to be here, they want to contribute, they want to work.
So it's important that we, meaning Irish people, have no preconceived ideas about anybody that's coming into this country. So you're not allowed to even have any sort of thought about it. And she's deciding that for you. So what you want is irrelevant. You shouldn't even have a thought about wanting or not wanting. You should just be accepting for the people that are coming in. But sure, they want to come in here and work. So their wants are prioritized above Irish people's wants, just in those 5 or 6 seconds in what she's saying. She tells you how she views you as Irish people. You have no say. You shouldn't even be thinking. Don't be thinking. Just go to work and pay my wages. That's essentially what she's saying there. That's what's built into her mentality. And so, 2 final points. One is the economic argument. That is all you ever get out of these people. They want to continue living their lives and claiming their expenses and living parasitically off of you via taxes and via all, I suppose, the other social benefits they get from the positions that they have. And they think that you should just go along with it. And as long as we can continue plowing people in here that pay taxes to us, sure, that's great. Ignoring the fact that there's massive camps across Ireland with 10, 12-foot steel fences around them that people are not allowed out of, or no one's allowed into unless you're living in there. What kind of integration are you talking about there? That's open-air prisons. And then the last point is, what if she was a genuine, honest and curious person? Her response might be more to Ben's question, something like this. I have not heard about that situation, But let's just say, for argument's sake, that there is a place that doesn't want it, and they're not happy with being outnumbered by people. Well, then we could do X. But she doesn't even entertain a potential solution to this scenario, even if she's unwilling to accept it being true. She could speak of it as if it is true, or if it is true, what could we do? But she doesn't even entertain that. So that tells me that she already is familiar with this situation. She's unwilling to speak about it because it doesn't reflect positively on herself or her political party or the rest of them in there. And so she's just trying to use logical fallacies to take her attention away from that. That's what you're dealing with.